Well, I had seen plenty of pictures and videos, so I was prepared for what it looked like. There is a certain shock in seeing it for yourself. And that's really why I wanted to go. I needed to get that sense of what does it really mean for our community. And, you know, it's so odd to see the lava fountain in Leilani Estates. I mean, it's odd. It's incongruous. It's just like it's something that belongs up in the national park. It doesn't belong in Leilani Estates. And the river of lava, the length of it and the power of it was just phenomenal. You know, if anything, I was struck by, if it should stop soon, really most of Puna is still there, you know? I mean, there's really a lot there if it could stop and repair the road. Most of it hasn't been covered, and we could recover if it stops anytime soon. It was very shocking to see Kapoho Bay and the tide pools all gone. You know, I think that's a natural treasure that we can't quite recover from no matter what we do. So it was a moving experience, but I was prepared for it. Nothing was a surprise. You know, for me, the 4-month legislative session is a little bit of, it's my annual marathon. It's like, it's a stressful, intense time, and I was literally getting off the plane after my last day of session when someone showed me a cell phone picture of the eruption in Leilani. And so my life changed from, I was planning a decompression phase and a little rest and relaxation, and instead it turned into one of the most stressful periods I've ever been through. Because while I'm not personally affected, I'm the senator from this district, and I feel a great need to come up with a response to this crisis from my position as a state representative. I also have a business in Pahoa, and our staff and everyone who lives and works around Pahoa has been so strongly affected by this. I can kind of feel it through them as well. But for other folks, yeah, you have, I mean, tell them they can never go back to the tide pools. Maybe we can never go back to Poiki. I mean, I think about the school out there, Ku'okala. Right now it's still standing, but you can't get to it. It's a very beloved place. The Warren Pond, you know how many little kids learn to swim at the Warren Pond? And so it's very beloved. And if we can never go there again, it'll be a great loss. And, it hasn't affected me on that super personal level. It affects me. I mean, I've swum a lot, snorkeled a lot in the tide pools and vacation land, and I love it down there. When we think, almost anyone in Puna, we think, let's go swimming today, that's where we go, right? You know, so can't do that anymore now. You want to go swimming, we're going to have to go a different direction. And all of Puna lost, for right now, all of its ocean resources. You know, it's a huge loss. You know, that weekend that it covered Kapoho, so many friends lost either their house or their farm. And at my store in Pahoa, 5 of my employees have had their house burned. About 12 of them are evacuated, and 4 are living in the shelter. So it's like, really can feel the stress level among the crew. And of course, business, like any business in Pahoa, our business is down almost half. So it's a scary thing financially as well. But you can really feel the personal stress in people whose house is lost. It's remarkable that when I come to Hilo, it's just another normal day. I mean, you really don't feel it in Hilo, in my opinion. You really feel it in Pahoa, any business you walk into or anybody you talk to that lives out that way. It's very strongly affected by it. I've played music at the shelter 3 times now and got to get a sense of the folks there, you know. And at first it was cozy, but now it's getting ragged and everybody needs to move on from there. First of all, there's no privacy. So if the person in the next tent is yelling in the middle of the night, you're hearing it, you know. Second of all, if you've ever been camping in the rain, but it's no fun. And this, you know, Pahoa, it's rains. We've had periods of heavy rain, and so if you're outdoors in a tent, it gets wet and soggy. And another thing that people don't realize is most of these folks evacuated with a box of valuables, and they got their box of valuables in a tent, which means they can never leave. You know, they can't put them somewhere and lock them up, and so they feel vulnerable and can't leave. So after several weeks, it's a very uncomfortable situation. We really need to move those folks to the next phase. I'm very encouraged that we've gotten started on the temporary shelters. You know, it's a nice landmark. I think it gives people who are still in the shelter hope for the next phase. You might call them tiny houses. They're not really houses because they're incomplete. They're just shacks, really, that the county has recently permitted for the duration of the emergency. That under certain circumstances, you can legally put up one of these houses that weren't legal before. And you could put several of them outside your house. We're asking churches to host some if they can. The thing is, they need to have access to kitchen and bathroom facilities. So some central area where they can have that, because these are just essentially 10 by 12 shacks. It's wonderful because people have some privacy, they can lock their possessions, they can have a little space of their own. It's a very important thing psychologically. But there's no electricity, there's no plumbing. That means at night it's dark, in the daytime it's hot. It's not going to be a comfortable place, but it's private and secure, and that's the one project that has happened is the one that Hope Services did at the Catholic Church in Pahoa, which is the first 20. But HPM and Darrell Oliveira are taking the lead in this in some sense, along with Hope Services. They hope to be able to produce 20 or 30 of those per week, but the next step is finding more places to host them. This place took 20. We have some potential places for 3 here and 5 there and 10 there, but now we need to find more places to host these temporary shelters. And if we can find that, I think we can build 20 or 30 per week and to get up to a couple hundred pretty quick. Well, what I'm really working on is trying to develop a longer-term housing relocation proposal beyond the temporary shelters. The longer-term solution has to involve, in my opinion, relocation. We really don't want people to go back and rebuild in the same spot. Now that we know what we know about the danger of that rift zone, it should be public policy that people don't go back and rebuild. Then there's also the simple, compassionate response to disaster that hundreds of people have lost their homes. For some of them, they've lost almost everything they had. And you know, when it's this many people affected, we have to help them, like any large disaster. There are several ways it might happen. One is everyone scatters to the winds and find a place to go on their own. It's possible that everyone could buy an empty lot in Paradise Park or other areas of Puna and build on their own. But it's my thought that one option that we should have on the table, which I've been pushing very hard, is to create a new community. Essentially a new subdivision where people from Lower Leilani and Kapoho can relocate to. The thinking is if you've lost your home and property out there, then you should be first in line for a lot in this new community we're creating. There'll be several levels of priority, the first going to people who lost their primary residence to lava. We don't want them to have any incentive to go back and build in the same place because they own property there. So the thought is develop for them a lot in a safer area. And it can be outside of the lava threat. It could be in a community where they're once again surrounded by neighbors and people have gone through a similar thing. People who used to be their neighbor. And it can still be a Puna type lifestyle. We need to have a little bit of land, not an apartment or a condo. The thing we've heard from most people when they've surveyed them is they really want to stay in the same general area. And that means staying in Puna. And of course, we kind of don't want them to stay in the same general area, but my thought is to move out of lava zones 1 and 2. And I have identified a couple large parcels of state land that are in lava zone 3, just between Pahoa and Ainaloa, or between Pahoa and Paradise Park. It's a very large parcel of land. I already had my eye on the bottom half of that one to develop a Puna agricultural park, which we've already begun the process for, but it hasn't moved along very far. It might be appropriate to fast track that agricultural park as part of this new community, because we not only lost a lot of homes, we lost a lot of farms and a lot of farming, and we need to replace that. People need to replace their livelihood, we need to replace the food production. So we have an area along Highway 130. It's outside of the main threat of the lava. We have access to the highway, electricity, and water. And my thought is this: if the county built one road with water and electricity, we could have little cul-de-sacs come off of it with clusters of houses. The reason I'm describing it like this is because we'll need to build it incrementally. We don't know right now what's the ending total of how many people are going to need this kind of help. There's the people who've lost their homes for sure now. There's the people who can't get to their home. And then there's other folks who are in some various stage of denial, which is, I think I'm going to go home one day. But maybe in 6 months from now they realize, well, no, maybe I'm never going to go home, and it may take 6 months or a year. You know, this event could go on for a long time. So I think the numbers of people that need accommodation are going to grow over time, and we cannot predict what it will be. Some folks, of course, have the means to go and start over again on their own, and they can pick wherever they want. But for those who don't have that means, it's my thought that the state and county could give them a lot in exchange for giving up their old lot in the lava inundation zone. Yeah. So you'd give up your property there, the state takes over that. And because the state is taking some value, we could ideally give that person the pre-lava value of that lot, and they could use that to apply for buying one of these new lots. So it's my thought to develop this new community between Pahoa and Paradise Park on state land of which there's large acreage with no plans and no native forest on it.
Is this similar to, I know the mayor has been talking about a new community. Do you think this is what he has in his mind?
Yes, it's the exact same. When I went to talk to him the other day, I got halfway through my presentation, he kind of stopped and says, no, this is what I'm already thinking, we're going to do this. He shares this vision very strongly. I think he was a little bit unaware of this parcel, this particular potential location, but it was also his vision to create such a community somewhere. And I think maybe, while the county officials have been working on first response and keeping the roads open and civil defense, I've been living day and night with thinking of what's going to happen next. And so I've been working very hard on this proposal, as I call it, a relocation proposal, and how it might work. So I think the mayor wasn't quite aware of how these might be the appropriate parcels. And honestly, I'm not attached to where it goes or what it looks like. It's just important to me that we do something for these people who are facing life without hope right now. There's a growing sense of despair and a growing mental health crisis, although I hate to put it that way, but there's a lot of people who need some hope right now and need a vision of what the rest of their life might look like. And I think as soon as we can announce such a project, it'll be like a light at the end of the tunnel for these people. If we can say to them, in 6 months we're going to have a lot that we can show you that's yours, so you can start to build on it, I think people can hold on and get to that point instead of being in basically despair right now of nowhere to go and not knowing what to do. There's a law, it's 171.93, which is the only law whose number I know in the whole books. And it was passed after the 1960 tsunami in Hilo. And we relocated at that time a lot of people from Bayfront area in Hilo up to Ivalani Street in Kamana. And this law was passed to enable that. So that was an example of state land being used to relocate people in emergency. So there is precedent for it. It has happened before. It's happened a couple times since then, once or twice on Oahu and once in Kalapana during the late 80s eruption. The Kalapana relocation effort wasn't quite as successful. The one in Hilo, of course, was, and everyone's forgotten about that. But so there is state law to enable it. No new law actually needs to be passed to make this happen, although we may need funding for it. But the law is already on the books to allow this to happen. And it's happened before. It's my thought, if we've done it before, why not do it now? This is, in some sense, the biggest disaster that's happened to our state in 50 or 60 years. I mean, I think going back to Pearl Harbor, or maybe the 1960 tsunami, I guess. Since then, I know, we were so fortunate no lives have been lost, but at this point 600 homes have been lost. And there's maybe 1,000 people homeless right now. And that's not counting the evacuees that just can't get to their existing home. Now, among those people, some have found places to rent. Some are staying in their friends' or family's garage or couch. I mean, that's the most common story you hear. But that's not a long-term solution. So they're better off, I think, than people in a tent at the park. But it's still unsustainable. situation in the long run. I do think a lot of people have said to me, you know, people out there just aren't going to leave, and I think that's not true. I think it's fundamentally changed. I'm a Puna person as much as anybody, but something really changed in the last few weeks, and a lot of people are looking at Lower Puna and realizing, no, it's not the place to live anymore, and they're going to be wanting to relocate elsewhere. I think a lot of people left because you can't count on the air being good overnight. You know, I mean, even though you can get there and sleep there, if the wind dies or if the wind shifts, you're breathing, you know, some kind of toxic fumes, and it's just not that safe to be there. So yeah, there's Lower Puna is a little bit of a ghost town right now. So it's my thought, if the relocation proposal goes the way I envision it, the state would donate some number of acres of land, whether it's 500, 1,000, 2,000. Ideally, we would donate it to a nonprofit. The reason I'm thinking that is because a nonprofit could move much, much more quickly than government can. So let's say we pick a nonprofit like Habitat for Humanity, someone that's in the business of building houses for people. We could give a long-term lease, like 65-year lease of this state land. Lease because it's very hard to sell state land. It's more normal to lease it. Give Habitat for Humanity or a similar organization a long-term lease. And they can plan out and divide up lots without actually subdividing it, because that's legal subdivision process. It'll take a couple of years, I think. But we could lease out licenses to a certain acre or half-acre parcel, like is done in a lot of agricultural places. So you'd have a license and not a fee simple ownership. And then that nonprofit could use its national resources, its volunteer resources. For example, Habitat could provide the labor to build people's houses for free. And I'm sure there are many philanthropic organizations that would help people rebuild in terms of the cost of materials. Every one of these lots will probably need a septic system, and there will be some cost involved. But I think we could develop houses this way minimally and fairly quickly. So, I mean, in my idealized version, we could show someone their lot in 6 months and maybe have a house on it 6 months later. And it would be an expandable idea because we don't know how many people are going to come. But hopefully, this community will also include some agricultural properties and maybe even access to the shoreline for fishing and ocean recreation. So it would be an actual community. One nice thing about this parcel is for agricultural uses is there's a very large amount of fresh water flowing underneath it, very shallow. We have more easy access to a massive quantity of fresh water there than almost any place else in the world. So farming has tremendous potential there. And there's already water and electricity and a highway there. So we could create not a substandard subdivision, but we could create a normal subdivision where people have county water and electricity without having to fight for it. Right now, the way Puna is, it's laid out as a grid. You can't get anywhere without a car. And it's nice if everybody wants land, but it's not good community planning. And so we could fix that. We could have, you know, community centers and have it be a community that functions as a community. And I think there's a lot of community planners looking at this and, you know, modifying my little pencil sketch of, well, let's do this and that. And well, people much smarter than me will help create a better design for it. But I'm pushing on this because I can't see another way to get people relocated quickly. The other option that I can see is if we can find a way for the state to buy out the existing lot or development rights on that lot, then that's essentially a taking. So maybe the state could pay someone who's lost their lot the pre-lava value of your lot in Leilani. And you can take that money and go buy a lot wherever you want. If we could make that happen, we could do it all much faster. We could give everybody enough money to buy a lot somewhere in much less time than creating this new road and all. But I'm not sure how that mechanism would go giving people money to buy private land. None of my proposal has to do with replacing people dollar for dollar or acre for acre. We can't replace a 15-acre farm. We can't replace $1 million oceanfront lot. But what we can, many of those people with, let's say, $1 million oceanfront lot have their own means to start over. They're not going to take one of these new government lots out in the middle of nowhere. But those people who need help starting over can find themselves, on a nice, peaceful, safe piece of property surrounded by people who've gone through something like them. It's a safe neighborhood, and they can have a sense of community. My thought is we could take care of the people in this disaster with a sense of aloha and have it be an example to our country and the world of this is how you respond to a disaster. You make it better. And I think it would just be a very uplifting story for not just the people affected, but for everybody in our state to be very proud of. We might have a special session. I'm not at the point yet where I want to ask for a special session, because to ask for it, I need to have a very clear plan with quite a bit of support for it. And I do think we'll be asking for a special session, but I'm not quite there yet. In terms of, I think, between the mayor and the governor and the federal agencies that are helping us, we need to get a little clarity on whether this is my relocation proposal is the way we'll go forward, or will we try to reimburse people to buy their own lots or houses somewhere else in some other way. We're still not quite ready to know what's the best option to move forward. If it is my relocation proposal, I think we'll be asking for a special session, because I think we'll need some money and maybe a couple of amendments to the law to make it happen a little bit easier. The Senate's going to come back in session in mid-July to confirm a couple of judges, so that would be a convenient time if we need it. And I'm, along with the legislative leaders, trying to decide in the next couple of weeks whether to request that or not. We may be able to move forward and do everything we can in the short term without that, and then just address whatever appropriations we might need next year. So the answer is I don't know, but I think we'll need a special session. I'm not ready to pull the trigger on requesting it yet. I've had a lot of people, especially on Oahu, say to me, why should we take care of these folks? They bought in a hazardous area. They knew the risk there. They bought cheap. You took your risk. You take your chances, right? And while I understand that thinking to a certain extent, I can't agree with it, because first of all, emotionally, these are my friends and neighbors. Second of all, whenever there is a big disaster in this country, what we do is we respond with compassion. We don't blame the victims. If you lived in New Orleans or Florida when a hurricane came through, we don't blame them for living in a hurricane zone. We help them, because that's the human, compassionate thing to do. So these people that lived in a place that someone else might say they shouldn't have been, fact is, maybe they're working poor. Maybe that's the only place they could afford to live. Or maybe they fell in love with this place, and every place that anyone lives has natural disasters. You can live in Kalihi and be inundated by a hurricane, or sea level rise, or an earthquake in San Francisco and San Mateo. We don't condemn people, just every place has its threats. The threat from lava in Leilani was statistically really no greater than the threat from a lightning strike in Kansas, So these people got hit by a disaster. They're real people who didn't do anything wrong. Our government permitted these subdivisions. We gave them permits to build. We strung electric lines out there, built roads. And they got hit by a natural disaster that no one really saw coming, except maybe a geologist. And I think it's outrageous to blame the victims in their time of crisis. That's not how that's not how Americans respond to their neighbors when a disaster happens. What we do is we help them. And so that's what this is. We have to put aside those kind of thoughts and realize if disaster ever hits my neighborhood, I hope my neighbors will help me out and not blame me for where I built. And so, most people respond to compassion and understand the need to take care of this very large number of people. But there are some that need to be convinced. But really, when you look at any place, it's Tornado Alley in Oklahoma, it's flood zones anywhere in the Mississippi Delta. Every place does have its disasters. And yes, we lived on a volcano. Yes, we knew we were taking our chances. Yes, we knew it could happen. But you know, there's people in Leilani that are living in their grandfather's house, and you look outside and you see a 100-foot tree that's 500 years old. And it was a peaceful, quiet, cool, wet, green place. It wasn't a place you expected lava. I mean, you might point to the people living out on the flow in Kalpan and say, well, they're clearly taking a risk, and they know it. But most of the people who got affected by this disaster aren't really in that category. They're middle-of-the-road, suburban-type people living in what was a very safe neighborhood. What we know, looking back with hindsight, yes, we can see the rift goes right through Leilani. Don't build there, but no one was thinking that 2 months ago.